Okay, well, my presentation, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me, and thank you for the LA Society for organizing this event. So my presentation is on principles of career management. I'll talk for about 45 minutes. Hopefully it won't be too boring. And then we'll open it up for Q&A, and we'll have 20 minutes of question and answers. So just to be different, I'm going to start with the last slide. So my presentation today is drawn from a book which I recently co-authored for the CFA Institute. It's called Career Success, Navigating the New Work Environment. It's an ebook. It's available on the CFA website. It's free. You can download it, do whatever you want with it. I co-authored the book with Dwight Churchill, who was the Chief Operating Officer of Fidelity Investments. And as you may know, he was also the CEO of the CFA Institute till recently. So most of the content comes from the book, and I will keep referring to the book during the presentation. So if I do too much of it, it's not marketing or anything, since I'm not getting paid for it. Okay, so let me just set the stage. Before we talk about career management, there are a few things we need to understand about career management. So first of all, let's take a step back, and we all have at some point looked for jobs and are looking for jobs. So the question is, when we go out conducting that activity, we have to ask ourselves, well, what are employers really looking for? The real basic hurdle for any job is the technical skills required, the hard technical skills required to perform that job. So that's really the very basic thing. And if you have made it to the interview process, then presumably you have those skills. So now there are other things that start to matter after that. Well, what are those other things? So cultural fit is a really key issue for employers. They are trying to figure out who you are as a person. And what that means is that they want to understand what are your values, what are your interests and motivations, what is your personality and your preferences, what other personal skills do you possess? And we'll talk about all of these in a minute. So the idea there is to figure out if there is a fit between who you are as a person and the corporate culture of the employer. Okay, this is a really key issue, and it's becoming more and more important in today's environment. The next step in the process is to figure out whether you have some soft skills, job-specific soft skills, which would determine whether you are successful or not in that particular job. So for example, some jobs may require an extreme ability to innovate. Well, then the focus is going to be on trying to figure out whether you have that ability by asking questions, talking about your previous experiences, what have you done in the past that can demonstrate your ability to innovate and things like that. Communication skills could be very important for a specific job. Interpersonal skills, how do you interact with your colleagues, with clients, and so on and so forth. Very important in marketing roles, for instance. And in the end, the idea is not only to consider you from the perspective of whether you can do a good job for the position that's being advertised, but also if there is some kind of a potential or fit for a career with that organization. And so it depends on certain things. First, is there a good cultural fit? We talked about that. Second, are you likely to have client impact in the organization? Client impact refers to both internal clients and external clients. In the context of an organization, when we perform our jobs and our functions, we are serving internal clients because other colleagues in other departments may use some of the output that we put out. And so we have to be careful in terms of not only thinking about external clients, but also internal clients. So the ability to have client impact is absolutely key and determines whether you will be successful not only within your job, within your function, but also broadly speaking within the organization. And then later on in the career, the ability to have leadership impact. Are you viewed by your peers in the industry and by your colleagues within the organization as somebody that is trusted, somebody that motivates other people, somebody that people are willing to follow because they view you as a leader, and so on and so forth. These two things, client impact and leadership impact, are absolutely key determinants of career success. There are a couple of chapters in the book which talk about what these things really are, how can you measure them, how can you monitor your performance relative to these two criteria. Are you having client impact? Are you having leadership impact? So I would highly recommend that you, if nothing else, you read at least those couple of chapters in the book. So look, in the end, career management is something which provides guidance on how to approach these job interviews, how to make career decisions, how to manage your career over time, and so on and so forth, okay? So before we jump into what career management really is, let's deal with one other question, which is, why are we so concerned about career management? Why are we, as employees, so concerned about career management? Well, the reason is that the responsibility for career management appears to have shifted over the years. So this is how the psychological contract between the employer and the employee has evolved over time. The psychological contract is an implicit, it's nothing in writing, it's just an implicit contract which highlights the term of engagement, basically. What are we talking about in terms of the relationship between the employer and the employee? And historically, traditionally, this psychological contract was based on the principle of reciprocity in loyalty. Okay, what does that mean? Well, that means that employees were expected to deliver satisfactory performance and demonstrate commitment and loyalty to the firm. And in response, employers rewarded such employees with stable, continuous employment and steady promotions over time. In that structure, career management was viewed more as the responsibility of the employer as opposed to the employee. Now, what has fundamentally changed in the last decade or decade and a half is the fact that we have clearly witnessed the end of this loyalty-driven contract. And it's driven by two main things. One, employers do not have the ability to promise continued employment for their employees. They are in a global environment, they are constantly confronted with restructurings, downsizing, outsourcing, technological developments, and so on and so forth. It is impossible for employers to promise continued employment with the firm under these circumstances. So, what are employers doing? Well, they are promising employability. It's very different from continued employment. The only thing that the employers typically promise today is that they will make available to you the setup, the organizational setup, the infrastructure, the processes that you need to develop you in your job profile. That is employability. They will work with you to improve how employable you are. Whether you remain with the firm or not is not the issue. So you have to view your employment in today's environment as something where you are attempting to make use of the resources provided by the employer and improve and enhance your employability, whether with the firm or with some other firm, okay? At the same time, from the employee's perspective, the focus has shifted to a total life perspective in managing careers. What does that mean? That means that the career and the job is not the only focus. We have other responsibilities. I have a responsibility towards my wife. I have a responsibility towards my family and other forms of responsibility that I have. And all those things have become more and more important over time for employees in general. So from a total life perspective, employees are not promising loyalty either. What they want is flexibility. They want flexible environments, flexible organizational setups, and so on and so forth, so that they can strike whatever balances they wish to strike from a total life perspective. All of this basically means one simple thing, that career management is your responsibility, is our responsibility. Okay? Okay, well, if that is the case, then the next obvious question is, fine, I'm willing to put the effort and understand what career management really means and how should I go about conducting that particular exercise, but is it really useful in the end? Well, research is pretty conclusive on this topic. Many research studies have consistently shown that at a starting level, students who undertake proper career exploration obtain more job interviews, perform better in job interviews, obtain more job offers, and are able to negotiate higher salaries. Research also shows that employees that have commitment to well-defined career goals outperform employees with no goals or low commitment to the goals that they have set. Research also shows that most successful managers, or managers that have become successful over time, engaged in active career management and did not simply rely on the loyalty ethic or being a yes man or so on and so forth. And finally, research shows that individuals who engaged in active career management showed more career mobility, that is, more promotions and movement within the company or across companies. This thing is really critical. Career mobility a few decades ago was viewed as something negative. You would work with one organization and that was it. You know, that was the loyalty environment that we were in. Today, if you haven't moved around, some people will view that as a negative. So in today's environment, during a career over your professional life, it is very likely that you will work for 5 to 7 organizations. That's very different from what we had 20, 30 years ago. So look, understanding the basic principles of career management, therefore, is absolutely key. It's your responsibility, so we need to, it's our responsibility, so we need to understand how does career management and the principles thereof help us, could potentially help us in achieving our career objectives. So let's talk about career management. What is the process of career management and what kind of activities should it involve? So at a very basic level, it involves gaining self-awareness through self-exploration. We need to understand who we are as an individual before we can talk about anything else. And again, I'll go through these steps in a minute in more detail. Then the second thing we need to understand is gaining environmental awareness through exploring the environment around us, professions, jobs, organizations, and so on. Okay? Then we need to take decisions which are geared towards achieving compatibility between who we are and our environment. Once we've done that, then we need to start implementing career strategies so that we can plan to some extent the next steps in our career development. And then over time, we need to evaluate our progress and revise the career strategies if the feedback suggests that we were approaching something from a wrong perspective. So here is one model of career management that we propose in the book. Consists of different things. At the very top, you can see awareness of self is the starting point. What does it mean to know yourself as a person? Well, you need to understand your values and your skills, your interests, your motivations, your personality, and your preferences, with the main emphasis being on values and skills. Then awareness of environment is the understanding of occupations, jobs, employers, and so on. Then once you have those two pieces, a good understanding of the two pieces, career decision making is the next step. And the idea there is, as I mentioned, is to achieve compatibility between who you are and your environment in making these career decisions. Then you set career goals, you have an implementation strategy, and you evaluate the feedback over time. So career management, in essence, is a combination of three different things. Career exploration, the first two steps, career problem solving and decision making, and then career planning and monitoring. Let's talk about the first step, because that's really the key. Self-exploration and awareness involves the following activities. Clarifying values. So what are values? Well, values are beliefs, principles, qualities, standards that you believe in. Those are the things that drive your day-to-day conduct, both in your personal life and your professional life. You can view values as something that is highly unsatisfactory to you if those principles or standards are not met. Okay? Identifying interests and motivations is again a very important task. These are activities that you like to perform and again that provide satisfaction to you. Understanding your skills is also critical. Throughout my experience, I have worked at many different organizations, and all organizations have this 360-degree programs where, we provide feedback to employees every year at the end of the year and so on and so forth. And I've always had a problem with those approaches because I think that feedback to employees should be provided on a daily basis. You don't have to wait till year end to bring up something that happened 9 months ago and make a big deal of it in a performance evaluation, right? I mean, if somebody's doing a great job, yeah, go ahead and give positive feedback. If somebody messed up on something, well, yeah, you go and tell them, hey, you messed up. Next time, be careful, right? So that's one level of frustration I have with those programs. But the second level of frustration is that in most organizations, during a performance evaluation exercise, 80% of the time is spent on development areas. We're sitting there telling employees, you need to develop this area, you need to develop that area, and so on and so forth. And sometimes it may well be that the manager sitting there doing the evaluation may be telling the employee, hey, you need to improve your communication skills. And everyone knows that the manager himself has a problem with communicating. So the credibility of the whole exercise gets challenged, right? So my view after thinking about this quite extensively is that organizations should really focus on leveraging the strengths of employees. And employees should really focus on leveraging their own strengths. Nobody's perfect. We are not going to be able to develop our weaknesses into our strengths and so on and so forth. That's not going to happen. So let's leverage our strengths. And in the context of an organizational structure, we can always put together a team which is perfect because we can combine individuals with different strengths. We don't have to take one individual and make him perfect or her perfect. We can achieve perfect teams by combining individuals with different strengths. So that should be our focus. So anyway, for us as individuals, it is really important that we understand what our natural strengths are and leverage those over time. For some of us, communication is very natural. We can communicate very easily. For others, it is not that natural, okay? So if it is not that natural, don't seek jobs where the success relies on your ability to communicate, okay? You'll be at a disadvantage. Assessing personality, determining lifestyle preferences, and so on and so forth. So this is what self-awareness is all about. Clarifying values is a really, really key exercise. Unless you understand your values, it is really difficult to achieve satisfaction in a job or in a career, okay? How do we determine what our values are? Because after all, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of values. Anything can be viewed as a value, you know. Arriving to work on time, punctuality is a value. You know, dressing up nicely may be a value for somebody. You know, treating others with dignity and respect is something that could be highly valued by an individual, and so on and so forth. So there are hundreds and hundreds of values. So how do we determine the value set that we as an individual should be looking at? So there are many exercises in the book, but one simple way of determining your values is to conduct the following exercise. And if you have not done something like this in the past, I would highly recommend you do it. For a period of some weeks, let's say 3 or 4 weeks, just take a note of everything around you that makes you either happy or not happy. Okay? It could be anything. Just jot down all the things that make you happy and satisfied and things that don't. So for example, you may be a health freak, okay? You want to go to the gym every day, and you know that days where the workload is too much and you can't go to the gym, you don't feel that great. Well, then staying healthy and fit is a really important value to you. Okay, so note that down. If you see your manager treating somebody with disrespect and that bothers you, well, that's again a really important value to you, because it's creating a problem for you at a conduct level. Okay, so jot down these things. So once you have a laundry list of all the values that are important to you, then the next exercise is to clarify values. This is a really, really tough exercise, because clarifying values means that out of the laundry list that you have, and you may easily have 100 things that you have jotted down over a period of a month, now the exercise is, what are the 7 or 8, and that's the limit, 7 or 8 values that you view as always valued. In other words, those are the absolute critical principles and standards that you abide to. Okay? And then you have some things which would be sometimes valued. Okay? They're important, but not all the time. And then things that are never valued. So I conducted this exercise for myself. If I'm standing here preaching and writing a book on all of this, I thought I'd rather do the exercise myself. So here are my values. You know, this is what I could come up with. My always valued values are creating value for clients, solving problems. I enjoy that activity very much. Achieving work-life balance is critical to me. Okay? Operating with integrity and fairness is very important to me. I'm in a managerial role. I have to treat all my employees very fairly, okay? And I need to have integrity in what I do, because otherwise I have no leadership impact. So these things are important to me. Treating others with respect and dignity is important. Seeking autonomy, control over my time and objectives is very important to me, okay? I get very frustrated when somebody else has control of my time and somebody else is setting objectives for me. Helping others, giving back to the society is something that my wife and I believe in very strongly. Working with talented people in intellectually stimulating and relaxed environment is very important to me. I love working with talented people. And living in a place where family feels comfortable and happy is really important. That's why I live in Boulder, Colorado. That's where my wife wanted to be. So we're there. Okay? Sometimes valued, earning significant compensation. Sometimes it's important for me, sometimes it's not. But let's be realistic. I think I have enough. So it has, over time, become not that important to me. Okay? I want fair compensation for what I do, for my job, but I'm not chasing money. So it's easy for me to say because I'm at a stage where, as I said, I have enough. But chasing money in itself, there's nothing wrong. It could be one of your most important values. Fine. One thing, however, that you need to absolutely understand is that at some point, making money your primary focus of your career can be extremely counterproductive because it can lead to career decisions which will create a tremendous misfit for you. You will be accepting jobs which are a total misfit for you simply because you're getting paid more. And over time, that's going to create a real serious problem. And it will create a problem at a stage where money is no longer important to you because you might think you have enough now. Okay? But then you'll be stuck. And you'll have to deal with a highly unsatisfactory situation with perhaps no way out. Okay? Seeking power and authority, not important, sometimes not important. Let's look at never valued. Seeking titles and designations is not important to me. I don't care what my title is. I don't care what my designation is. I just want to do the work and seek recognition in that way. Okay? I have no desire to be the CEO of Goldman Sachs. That's not a job that excites me. Okay? I'm a research guy. I'm a new product development guy. That is what drives me. That is my passion. Okay, so we have to be, again, these are the kinds of exercises that help clarify some of those ideas. I'm not concerned about job security at all. I don't like working independently. I like working in teams. I don't seek significant business travel. That's not something that I am seeking actively, but unfortunately, I have to do a lot of it. I don't seek competition, and I don't seek recognition. Okay, so conduct this exercise for you, okay? You need to have a really good understanding of what the 7 or 8 values are that are absolutely driving your conduct on a day-to-day basis and form the basis of how much satisfaction you have in your life. Now, realize that if your always valued values are not satisfied, you will be an extremely frustrated person. Okay? Some people accept jobs and situations where there is a clear conflict between their always valued values and what they're getting into. They know there is a conflict, but they accept that conflict not explicitly but implicitly. So for the first 2, 3, 4, or 5 years, it's fine, but at some point, there is a value conflict that arises. And again, when that conflict arises, sometimes it's too late. You're stuck. You can't get out of that situation. And that starts a cycle of extremely frustrating period of time. And we call it getting stuck. Okay? So please don't get stuck. Conduct this exercise at the outset. All right, so now that we have clarified our values, well, what do we do next? Well, next is that every time you have a career decision to make, as I just mentioned, you put your values to the test, okay? And understand what kind of value conflict a certain situation is going to raise for you. So here is an example. About 4 or 5 years ago, I used to work for a company called Westpeak Global Advisors. It was owned by the French banking group Natixis. And some circumstances arose where we had the opportunity to do a management buyout of the company. So I was confronted with this situation where I had an opportunity to do a management buyout, and I was wondering whether I should do it or not. So I did my value testing. If we do the buyout, how is that going to affect my values? So as you see here, this is another exercise that you should conduct every time you have a career decision to make. So in the column in the middle where it says compatibility, you can see that my values, all of them were either compatible, so the decision supported that value, or some values were not relevant to the decision. The only conflict that arose for me was achieving work-life balance, which is very important to me, because now that I'm doing a management buyout of the company, I will be the public face of the company, so I'll have to do tremendous amount of travel. So I discussed it with my wife, and we said, yeah, hey, this, other than this particular issue, the management buyout is a very positive development. It takes care of all the other values, but this particular value is going to get violated. So with my wife, we came up with a plan. We understood for the next 2-3 years I'm going to have to travel, but we found ways of dealing with it and understanding how I will spend more quality time when I'm not traveling with her and with my family and so on and so forth. The point here is as follows. When you go into a situation where you are completely aware of the value conflict, then you have an ability to deal with it and to live with it. And you have a plan for how you're going to deal with that conflict. The problem arises when people go into something without knowing or ignoring a value conflict. And that is a situation that should be absolutely avoided. All right, so that's about us, values, how do we look at ourselves, who we are, understand who we are, and so on and so forth. Now let's talk about the environment. Well, understanding the environment basically involves understanding different occupations, different jobs, different employers. Occupations can differ in many dimensions. For example, nature of work, financial rewards, physical and social setting, lifestyle implications, and so on and so forth. Okay? Clearly, if you are motivated by social work or giving back to the society or working for non-profit organizations, well, you're not going to earn significant amounts of money. So you should not even look for that. That is not what's driving you. It's very clear by the nature of the job that, that is not something that's going to happen. Okay? If you are a young professional and you want to work on Wall Street because you want to make a lot of money, then don't be asking for too much work-life balance at the start of your career. Okay? So these are the kinds of things that we need to understand with respect to occupations and so on and so forth. Jobs. This is really important. Job is a vehicle by which we implement or practice a profession. But the thing that people don't realize is that the same job can be structured very differently in two different organizations. In one organization, portfolio management may have an extreme focus on portfolio construction, rebalancing, research, and so on. At another organization, that same role, portfolio management, could have a very high degree of focus on marketing. The organization wants the portfolio manager to go out and talk to clients. Okay? Same job. But if you don't like traveling, if you're not good in front of clients, if you don't have communication skills, if you don't have interpersonal skills, you're going to fail in this organization. So just because the two job positions said portfolio management, it doesn't mean that the jobs are equal. You have to make an effort to understand what exactly is entailed by, within the context of the organization. How is the organization approaching the same job? With respect to employers, it is absolutely key to understand the corporate culture of employers. And it is absolutely important to understand the management style and the values of your prospective manager, the person that you are going to be working closely with, and the person that you're going to be reporting into. You want to avoid a conflict between the corporate culture and the values and the personality and so on of your manager. Both are critical. Let's look at corporate culture. Here is an example. Google. This is from their website. Here are some of the business values or work values that Google promotes. I'm just going to read this out to you. Maintain a small company feel despite its tremendous growth. Emphasis on innovation and commitment to cost containment means that each employee is a hands-on contributor. No corporate hierarchy and everyone wears several hats. Hiring policy is aggressively non-discriminatory and favors ability over experience. They seek professionals who share an obsessive commitment to creating search perfection and have a great time doing it. What does all of this mean? Well, what this means is that Google fosters entrepreneurial spirit and looks for individuals who are talented, self-motivated, have significant ability to innovate, and enjoy the business that Google is in. That's what it means. Okay? So, you have a corporate culture which highlights a really hard-working and intense work environment. Now, if you join Google without understanding this, you're going to be in trouble at some point. Okay? So this is the kind of stuff that is involved in exploration. And look, in a managerial business management kind of role, I personally interview a lot of young people and even mid-level people or even senior level people. And something that has always surprised me and sometimes shocks me, especially when it is coming from a mid and senior level perspective, that people show up for interviews without having done any homework on understanding what the corporate culture is, on what is the entity that they're applying for, a job for, really represents. And then in interviews, one of the other approaches that people take is that they think that the interview, they can just sit and answer questions. Well, that's not the point. The point of the interview is that you have to ask questions too. And if you don't get your chance to ask questions, you have to make sure that you get it. You have to ask for your chance. Okay? And in many situations, I've found myself saying, okay, so do you have any questions for me? No. Really? You're looking for a job and you have no questions for me? How can that be? Don't you want to know who I am, how I work, and so on and so forth? No. Okay, that's really problematic. All right. Okay, so why are we talking about all of this? Self-exploration, environmental exploration, and so on and so forth. Here is the reason. So modern careers are exposed to two kinds of risks. One is an external or exogenous risk, which arises from the environment. Okay, you may lose your job because of corporate restructuring, downsizing, outsourcing, technological developments, and so on and so forth. That's one form of risk. The other risk, which is a much more serious risk actually, is the internal or endogenous risk, which results from career decisions that you have taken, which have caused a misfit. Okay? Now let's talk about the misfit. When we conduct surveys to find out why people change jobs, very consistently, the two things that always show up at the top of the list and by far are viewed as the most important reasons why people are switching jobs is one, they dislike the corporate environment, meaning they don't like the corporate culture they're in. There's nothing wrong with the corporate culture. It simply means that there's a misfit, right? Second, they dislike the present manager. Again, it's a misfit. That's why they have this problem. Okay? Those are the two main reasons. Look, compensation is not even a reason in the top two. Actually, it's not even in the top four. There are very few people who actually change jobs, apparently, just based on compensation. Just compensation. Okay? So these are the two most important reasons. It's a misfit. So we absolutely have to avoid misfits because that is what gets people and all of us in trouble. So the common mistakes that people make and that introduce a misfit, Laura, I have till what, 4:20? Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay, so what are the common mistakes that people make that causes this misfit? Well, again, first of all, they don't understand who they are. We've talked about it extensively, right? If you don't know who you are, you're never going to even know that you're creating a misfit for yourself, and then down the road you'll have a problem. The second big problem, the second big issue is that employees who do not clearly define their career goals and the notion of success in the context of who they are. Okay? As I said, I have no desire to be the CEO of a large company. Okay? Because I don't think that leverages my strengths, and I don't think it's a job that I enjoy, that I would enjoy. Okay? But if I had pursued that and somehow gotten to that level, I would have been a really lousy CEO because I know that's not my strength. And I would not have been a happy person. Okay? So that's again, it's defining who you, understanding who you are and defining your career objectives in the context of who you are, which is really important. It is also important to pursue a profession or an occupation that motivates you, okay, that you enjoy. It's really critical, and we'll talk about that in a minute in more detail. And of course, corporate culture is really important to understand, and whatever decisions you're making, you have to seek compatibility between your values and the corporate culture. And then, as I said, when it comes to working for other people, you have to work for people where you have compatibility of values. It's very hard to work for a manager that you don't respect. It's hard. It's very hard to work for someone that you don't view as a role model for you. Because what are you learning? Otherwise, you're not learning anything. Okay? So here is the big question. What drives success in our professional careers? So in the book, for the book, I interviewed many people who have been extremely successful. And I think 10 or 12 interviews are published in the book. So it's people like, John Bogle, founder of Vanguard, Andrew Lowe, and so there are very amazing people globally. Jean-Paul Villain, the CIO of Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world, and so on and so forth. So these are really important, very successful people. When I ask an average person what drives success, I always end up with an answer which is a laundry list of things. You have to work hard. You have to innovate. You have to do this. You have to do that. It's like a list of, 50 things. Well, nobody can do those 50 things. And it makes it feel that achieving success is a really difficult and complicated thing if there are so many things that you have to do right. But look, this is what happens. When I ask the really successful people what insights they can share as to why they're so successful, I always get the same answer. And the answer is passion. I love what I do. I'm really passionate about my job. I enjoy my job. Okay? That's the first thing they say. And then sometimes people just stop there and they say, well, that's it. I love my job. So Warren Buffett was asked the same question, and his response was, I tap dance to work every day. I love my job so much, I can't wait to get out of bed and I'm dancing to work. How many of us, honestly, how many of us have that attitude towards work? The vast majority of us probably find it hard to get out of bed. Gee, I have to go to work again, right? And he's 85, something like that, and he's still tap dancing to work. Another very CEO of a very large company told me that he feels like a kid. He thinks, with respect to his work, he feels that he goes to the playground in the morning. So he feels like a kid who's going to the playground in the morning and the candy store in the afternoon. Really? That's how you approach your work? Yeah, that's how they approach their work. Passion is the only thing that really drives success in the end, the true notion of success. Okay? Why is that the case? Why is passion so important? Well, passion is so important because passion, if you love what you're doing, then you naturally acquire all those qualities and abilities that you need to be successful. Okay? So, passion fosters commitment and motivation that keeps you going during difficult years. How long is a professional career? 35 years, 40 years for some people, 50 years? That's a long time period. Are we not going to get some difficult environment and time periods during that long 40 years? Of course, we all will. What will keep us going? The fact that we enjoy what we do. Okay? Gives you an ability to deal with hard times. It facilitates the process of continuing education throughout a very long career. If you cannot develop your skill set over time, there is no way you will get the peer recognition and other things that go with true success. Okay? Do we think that Warren Buffett just learned whatever he learned from working for Benjamin Graham 50 years ago, 60, 70 years ago? Well, no, he developed himself over time. Right? Why? Because he enjoyed his job so much that there was this curiosity to learn more and more and more, right? That's passion. Passion also fosters innovation and creativity. And it comes naturally to you, completely naturally. If you don't have passion, there is no way you can inspire other people. There is no way. So if you want a leadership impact within the organization, within the industry, which is what true success is about in the end, at least one perspective of success, then you have to have passion, because that is what others will be inspired by. Okay? So that's why passion is so critical, and that's why it is really important for you to engage in occupations, to conduct jobs which over time can become a passion of yours, that you enjoy doing, something that is fun. Now, one of the big premises of the book that Dwight and I wrote is that None of us, 99% of us, are ordinary human beings. We are not born with an ability, some tremendous ability or strengths, okay? We are not Roger Federer, who at the age of 6 was already winning junior championships. I mean, the guy is so talented, right? So very lucky for him that he has that talent and he was able to convert his talent and his passion into a profession. Very lucky. Okay? I'm told that Mariah Carey was singing and composing songs at the age of 3 or 4. Really? Okay. I mean, that's a natural ability. Look, 99% of us don't have that. We are not born with abnormal talents that we can exploit and convert into passion over time or in our profession over time. So how do we move from something at the start of our career, something that we are not too sure we'll like or not like, or something that we have some level of interest in, how do we move from there to making that thing our passion? So that is a big premise in the book, that there is a process by which this happens. It is absolutely possible to convert your profession into your passion. Okay? A lot of things need to fall in place, but career management tells you how that will happen. And that is the main focus of the book. All right? It's very easy if you have a passion, well, not very easy, but it's easier if you have a passion to find ways of converting the passion into a profession. But the trick is, most of us don't have that. Most of us have a profession to start with, and now we need to find ways of converting it into a passion over time if we want to be successful. So that's the big premise of the book. That's what you should that's why you should get the book and read it, so you can understand how that process really works over time and what are the things that need to fall in place. But to summarize the whole thing, here is some of the principles that I would like to leave you with. So career exploration, which means understanding yourself and the environment, is the cornerstone of career management. If you don't have those 2 steps right, then nothing else will fall in place. Now, after that, whatever you do, compatibility and fit should be your primary objective, even if it leads to very tough decisions in the short term, because in the long run, you will be making the right decisions. So what does that mean? It means choose a profession that motivates you and is likely to become your passion over time. Choose a job, role, or function that leverages your natural strengths. Choose a manager whose values and management style suit you and who can become your mentor over time, your role model. Choose an employer whose corporate culture is compatible with your values. And all these things, in the end, bring about something, compatibility. And why do we want compatibility? Because we absolutely want to make sure that we eliminate misfit risk. Okay? Or that if we are taking that risk, that we are aware that we are taking that risk and we have a plan for how we are going to deal with that risk. So let me leave you here. I'm already over my time, and let's open it up for debate, discussion, disagreements, concerns. Yes, sir.
I have a question. Do you have a way we can get
This PowerPoint? I believe this PowerPoint is going to be posted on the website of the LA Society. Is that correct or no?
We released it, and yes, we will post it.
Okay. So it will get posted. And the book is on the CFA Institute website. You can download it freely. There's no cost to it. It's free. And you don't even have to read it.
You mentioned that cultural fit was
Okay, so I'm sorry, I keep referring to the book, but in the book, there is a big chapter on how to evaluate corporate culture. So there is a list of 5 or 6 things that you can do. But look, the internet is such a fantastic tool these days that anything or everything that you need to know about a company you can find. You can also find on the internet names of clients. You can also find on the internet people who have recently left the company. And in many cases, it is possible to contact the clients and those people to get an inside scoop. For example, I get calls from people who are aware of the employers that I have worked for in the past, and they call me and they say, hey, sorry to bother you, but just 5 minutes on what do you think of company XYZ? I'm applying for a position. And I don't have any problem per se giving a fair assessment of what I, view those employers to be from a cultural point of view.
And so when individuals are marketing themselves on their resume,
Yeah.
should they be focusing less on here are my list of accomplishments and more on here's what I believe in, that sort of thing?
Well, you have to go a little bit by, you have to follow the situation a little bit. If somebody is asking you the question which clearly indicates that they're trying to understand who you are, right? So if somebody, look, a direct question in the interview could be, so what are your most valued values, right? Well, then clearly somebody's trying to understand you and who you are, right? So, well, in that case, look on this slide here, this is the kind of stuff you should be able to reply to that question like that and say, I know who I am, okay? These are the things that motivate me. Here are my most important core values. Here is what I view as my areas of strength, and so on and so forth. I mean, if you can do that in an interview or in a job situation, we love it. the interviewing manager will love it. And it may well be that the manager may very well say, hey, there is a misfit. That doesn't work for me, sorry. But it's better to be in that situation than find that out 2 years down the road and having to look for another job at that point.
What made you interested in career management, writing a book about it? Just writing.
My question is, what made you interested in career management and writing a book about it, since that's not really your professional background?
So that's a really good question. So no, it is not. I was actually involved in a nonprofit organization where I was asked at some point to write a small article on career management, and it was primarily geared towards the emerging markets and the students there and so on. And then that article was very well received, so they asked me to write a follow-up article, and that was well received, so then they asked me to write a follow-up. They kept giving me new topics to write about. And since I was supporter of that particular nonprofit organization, I kept writing and writing and writing, and in the end I discovered, gee, I have 10, 15 articles there, and this is all really interesting stuff. And as look, we go through our careers without thinking about these things, right? And so as I started thinking about it in a more organized and structured manner, I realized that there is a lot that we can share with younger professionals, which would make it really interesting for them so that they don't make the same mistakes. By the way, there are very, very successful, well-known people that I've interviewed in the book, and you can read their interviews, but I was asking one of them, I'm sorry, you're such a busy person, and you've agreed to do this interview with me for the book. Why? And his response was, well, I don't want the younger guys who are entering this field to make the same mistakes I did. And I didn't know about this stuff. I didn't think about this stuff in this manner, but now that I have that knowledge and wisdom, I'd like to share it with them so that they don't. So that was kind of my objective too. And then at some point, the CFA Institute, the idea was discussed with the CFA Institute. They became very interested, so then I started taking it much more seriously, and one thing led to another. Then Dwight entered the picture, and Dwight and I worked on a lot of stuff, and we found it really interesting to put our thoughts together in a structured way that can be useful. So it's
Thank-
part of giving back
Thank you.
to my industry, right? Yeah. So I'm done. Well, okay, I'm wrapping up. Thank you very much.